Hi, everybody. Welcome to the session. Dana and I are really excited to be here today. As mentioned, we're from a company called Skyward, which specializes in helping brands create high quality content at scale. So this is sort of, talking about these topics is really the bread and butter of what we do day to day. And we do everything from, driving content strategy to identifying the right creatives to supplying the technology to create content more efficiently. But, we're not here to pitch. That's just to let you know that we really come at this topic from a couple of angles. So, one, as professionals who are accountable for our own brand's content vision and marketing strategy, just day to day, and from our experiences having the privilege to work with brands like, IBM, Neutrogena, MasterCard, to do exactly what we're talking about today, which is really bring a customer obsessed mindset to life in the form of high value content that ultimately drives business. So I think to frame up the discussion here, why is it important to take a customer obsessed approach to content creation in the first place? And that's basically, we believe, because we've seen it proven time and again, customers actively seek out the brands that are able to demonstrate they get them, that they truly help them, and that they put their needs first. And this is a really timely consideration, because the backdrop to our conversation is that post pandemic, CEOs are heavily invested in ensuring their brands offer a best in class customer experience. And that's elevated customer centricity and customer centric content from really a strategic marketing priority to an enterprise wide priority. And that might even be the reason why some of you guys are attending the event this week. For marketing, this is a huge opportunity, right? Because we're in the best position to orchestrate connections between channels and stakeholders and touch points that really make up the holistic customer experience. But if you're like most brands, you might have an organization that's not quite as customer centric or content competent as it needs to be today. So really, the critical question is not why is customer obsessed content creation important? It's what does it mean to create customer obsessed content? Because until you truly understand that, you can't really deliver on it. So Dan and I are here today to help you, key in on really the answers to that question. What does it mean to create customer obsessed content? And I'll be sharing insights from some of our most recent buyer survey research. I'm going to start with what we've found to be the key traits of customer obsessed content experiences. And then Dan's really going to drill into the actual examples of how brands are bringing those traits to life in practice. So, if we had to sort of, create the algebra of, customer obsessed experiences to boil down the factors that go into this to an algebraic equation, it would look like this: content plus help times relevance times credibility over velocity. And I'm going to come back to this, but I want to walk you through exactly how customer obsessed brands approach each of these factors in a way that's significant to their success. So, starting with content, particularly in a digital context, I think it's well recognized that the customer experience is a content experience. Content is what really gives your experiences shape and form. But the influence that that content has is greater than a lot of brands realize. So, in our recent buyer survey, a majority of consumers, 54%, and 53% of B2B buyers said that the quality and authority of a brand's content significantly impacts whether or not they purchase from the brand. So, a brand's content was significantly influential to more people than its mission and values, how personalized its experiences were, and even the quality of the e commerce experience. So, the first thing that customer obsessed brands do is capitalize on this, right? By treating content like a utility, not a commodity. So, what do I really mean by that? Traditionally, content has come to amount to a series of assets that we sort of hustle to produce for specific channels. It gets pushed, it gets amplified, it gets boosted, or launched in a campaign. And this is really tactical thinking that's working against the greater goals of the organization. Many brands, maybe yours included, have gotten accustomed to feeding channels that are delivering an offsite experience rather than building a network of interconnected assets to create a really rich owned experience. So as you transition from one to the other, you need to get really clear about the purpose of every piece of content you create and how that connects back to your own content ecosystem. So for customer obsessed brands, content isn't always on utility. It's a product in itself that's really designed to enrich and assist the customer experience, not just amplify a message at a point in time. So that's a big mindset shift, right? The thought is not, what content do we need to fulfill this campaign? It's what information can we provide to make this decision making process or make overcoming this challenge that our audience is facing easier. And you want your content to surround your customer with a continuous consultative experience that brings them closer to your brand and really helps them make sense of your offerings on their terms. And this was a theme that came up multiple times in our survey research. So, it's very important to customers to be self-directed, to be assisted in their decision-making process, but they resist being influenced. So the goal is to have a continuous stream of content driving business demand. And as you build that continuous content, it's going to accumulate more and more value and equate to a larger and larger impact over time. And then the second quality that's really shared by customer obsessed brands is planning and staging content around helping moments rather than buying stages. So buying stages, or the funnel is a convenient framework, right? But it's broad strokes. It doesn't fit as well within a modern marketing context. First, because we know buyers don't follow a linear path when they consume content or when they're purchasing products in the real world. And second, because funnel thinking is sort of a slippery slope into funnel metrics. Thinking at the awareness stage, we measure clicks. At the conversion stage, we measure leads. Our department's only responsible for content at the consideration phase, right? Maybe that sounds familiar. That can be really counterproductive when you need to drive cross-functional alignment around a holistic customer experience. So what's better than aligning content to funnel stages is mapping out the macro and the micro helping moments that exist throughout your customer's decision-making journey. So our survey respondents revealed really clear frustration with any marketing tactics that were designed to influence that decision-making, as I mentioned. What they value and what they do want to see more of is the right help at the right time. So specifically help that allows them to learn what they need to confidently draw their own conclusions about their next course of action. And this is sort of, the basis of what we do with SEO content, right? Know the questions your customers are asking and answer them better than anybody else. With identifying helping moments, you take that next step towards, here's the question or need to fulfill. And now, how can we deploy content from an informational and even an experiential perspective to make that step easier, or to make finding that answer faster, or to provide relief in a moment of frustration that's significant to our customer? So, keying into helping moments, even if they're small, really has a cumulative positive impact that's much more powerful than aligning content to buying stages. And then there's this concept of relevance, right? Which is really a highly nuanced phenomenon when you study customers. So, something critical to keep in mind as you think about relevance is that our customers are essentially living in filter bubbles. There's a great TED talk about filter bubbles, by the way, if anybody's interested. But because of how search and social media algorithms operate, whether they realize it or not, our customers in their everyday lives have become accustomed to operating in an environment that's really highly tailored to their interests. So when something feels irrelevant, it's a source of almost, immediate frustration. So in our research, we found these very strong negative reactions to content that lacks specificity, or when customers find themselves having to, hunt around or read between the lines to determine if something fits their needs or not. Among the top challenges that were shared by both consumers and B2B buyers we surveyed was finding the product or solution a brand offers that's relevant to them. And their most common frustration was brands that were pushing irrelevant offers and information onto them. So Customer obsessed brands really take the time to package content down to the detail in a way that immediately triggers a sense of self recognition and personal alignment in their target customer. And that requires authenticity, right? Then they maintain that alignment by consistently surfacing more and more specific content based on that customer's expressed needs and then their real-time actions as triggers. So what moves the needle far more than automated triggers like greeting the customer by name when they log into their account is using narrative thinking to anticipate their next thought or need and then unlocking the right content. So there's a lot less static and frustration in their journey. And even in putting an experience in front of customers that they can easily make relevant to themselves, like filtering tools and assessments, is a lot better than the alternative from our findings. So, relevance is really about presenting your customer with specific, authentic content that fits within that highly curated bubble and then remaining welcome there by continuing to provide tailored help from that moment on. Next is earning credibility through creators. So, we know credibility is a key factor in gaining audience trust. That's key to earning customers. And that concept of earning trust through content has been around for a long time. It's, in the form of content marketing. What's newer is the emphasis on who's delivering the message. So, because of legacy marketing tactics, customers are really wary of brand messaging. They're really suspicious of brand curated endorsements as well. So, whether that's customer testimonials or celebrity influencers that you might be using. As a result, upwards of 80% of both consumers and B2B buyers say they consult resources like Google, like review sites, competitor sites, and peer and friend networks really frequently when making decisions about whether or not to purchase from a brand. Customer obsessed brands are really successful at building credibility upstream in the customer journey by incorporating the voices of micro influencers into their native content. So, micro influencers are people your target customers respect and find really qualified or credible to speak on specific topics they're interested in. So, an example might be an ed tech brand using a blog that features advice for teachers coming from actual teachers, or a skincare brand offering customers tailored skincare tips from actual dermatologists. So and the passionate experts that are in your own brand can even be activated as micro influencers if they have information to share that they're uniquely equipped to provide, right? IBM Security has actually seen, huge success activating its internal X-Force team to contribute thought leadership and updates for CISOs on how to combat breaking security threats. So this is the kind of mindset that you want to have. Um, Research shows that the borrowed authority of those experts actually increases brands' perception as being trustworthy, altruistic, and well connected, which lingers as customers sort of get further downstream in their decision making process. So it's as simple as starting to ask who's creating our content, and do those creators reflect our audience or the people our audience would otherwise seek out for this information. So credibility through creators. And that last quality I want to touch on is velocity. So, specifically, baking velocity into your content creation model. It's not really surprising that brands that operate solely within sort of rigid corporate messaging frameworks and, according to campaign calendars, don't lend themselves to the level of relevance and responsiveness that's really required to create a best in class customer experience. Customer obsessed brands plant their flag around the themes and topics that they want to own in the market, but use the ingestion of what we call fast insights. So, things like search intent, social listening, real time voice of the customer data to like calibrate that message, to develop those day to day pieces of content that relates to what their customers are thinking and doing and reacting to relative to those topics that they want to own in near real time. So the ability to act on insights and get content into market quickly is just as important as having the insights themselves. And it's a really sticky spot for a lot of brands. But in answer to that, we've found customer obsessed brands have more successfully adopted hybrid content creation models. And that includes a mix of internal and freelance content creators, with a really type of flexible resourcing that gives them the ability to pivot and activate additional resources as needed to get new content created when they need to get that created in markets that they can remain competitive. So high velocity baked into your content creation model. So to quickly recap, um, in our experience, this equation for customer obsessed experience is content deployed at scale, plus a helping framework, relevance, and credibility. And those are really essential to earning trust. And all of that deployed at high velocity. So I'm going to let Dan continue and walk you through some examples of brands who are actually implementing these principles and getting it right. So sort of bring it to life for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey. So yeah, I think the principles are great. We want to look at how folks are putting this work into action. Largely, being customer obsessed has always been a really smart and solid business strategy. But as Casey pointed out, as more and more digital interactions are folks are flocking to digital as a primary point, maintaining that level of customer service can be hard. So I'll talk today about a few brands who have made that leap, and what we can learn from them. The first is First Citizens. It's tongue twister to start off here. So if you're unfamiliar with First Citizens, they're America's largest family-owned bank. They pride themselves on truly looking out for the customer, the kind of what they view as the long view of the customer. So not chasing short-term gains. How do we set up folks for success, whether it's individuals or companies, high net worth folks? And on the screen, you see the Holden family, and this is Frank Jr. up front. I'll tell you a quick example that brings their passion to life here. So one day, Frank was driving around town and noticed one of the branches, the grass was a little long. So what does Frank do? Not pick up the phone, but actually drove home, got in his truck, put his lawnmower in the back, came back and started mowing the lawn and sweeping up the clippings and really showing the kind of pride of ownership in the bank. As he's doing so, there's a customer that pulls up, not knowing who he is, says, "Hey, I love what you're doing here. Are you taking on any new customers? My lawn down the street is a little long. I'd love to have your help." Instead of saying, "Hey, no, that's not me," as soon as he finishes, he puts his lawnmower back in his truck, heads over and mows his customer's lawn. So the story here is a simple one, but it's one that's going to be told and retold, and it's because there's moments in time where we reveal ourselves, where we show who we are, and kind of what we care about and what we stand for. The bank stands for doing anything and everything they can to make their customers successful, and really invest in the community. And in doing so, they created lots of raving fans, which isn't surprising, right? So as soon as kids would be old enough to open an account, their parents would bring them in to open an account just as their parents had done for them, and so on. So truly this deep relationship oriented approach. But in First Citizens case, a lot of these moments of magic were taking place at the branch level, which is obviously a problem as more and more digital interactions and banking interactions go digital. So they had to change and really start to think through what their digital experience looked like, and how they wanted it to be represented. And it really was focused on their core principle of the long view, and helping moments. So they completely reshaped their web experience and looked at all of those moments where they could be helpful. And they broke up their universe into their business segments and their audience segments and industries. So things like personal banking, SMB, commercial, and high net worth. and they totally reshaped their digital experiences holistically. So as Casey mentioned, it's not about chasing individual assets or campaigns. It's how do we expand this influence across all interactions. So thinking through email and social and web, and new account opens, and if you're applying for a mortgage for the first time and you've never done it before, what should that experience look like? So really focused on making their values come to life, and reshape their entire digital experience truly inside of 12 months, and continue to invest in that library to expand all the areas and moments that they can help. And what this has allowed them to do is also take a perspective. So there's lots of volatility short term. So, new financial products popping up, crypto, NFTs, like how do we understand how this fits into our long-term success from a commercial standpoint? Starting to think through, what is all the work dynamics that are taking place and what customers need. We heard that from WeWork earlier. Like we're hearing data and insights and offerings around the workplace that we've never even considered before. So how can First Citizens help be a true partner and help in all those areas? And what this has done is allowed them not only to set their clients up for long-term success, but set their bank up for long-term success, because now they're building a platform for help that drives the credibility, the relevance, the velocity to transform this all inside of 12 months, and truly keep going as they mature. So now, as we move on here from family banking to a new category, which is an internet favorite of puppies and kittens. So Hill's Science Diet, pet food, their kind of customer obsessed mindset is really focusing on what Casey referred to as helpful moments. So they looked at and deconstructed all of the different milestones within a pet parent relationship with their pet. So everything from selecting a breed to bringing a pet home for the first time, to training, and all the way through to aging pets, and even navigating the death of a pet. And under these categories, they split the content approach into two kind of subsegments, which influence their creator strategy, which Casey talked about as well. So the first is emotional support. So how can I have like-minded folks and lighthearted moments and all of those things in each of these stages that truly understand the kind of human nature of the brand. And then the other, which directly goes into their brand promise of scientific research for Hill Science Diet, is how do I have accredited professionals, in this case veterinarians, build science-backed content to truly help me when I need it. And their approach is similar to what we described earlier, which is how can I use Google to start to understand the answers to the test? Because as pet parents and parents of people, whenever we have questions or thoughts or needs, what do? We hop into Google and start asking questions and try to get the best answers. And here, from Hill's Science Diet standpoint, they really wanted to always be the best answer for any question that pet parents may have within their universe. And as they look at search as one of the sort of fast insights that Casey referenced to help drive inspiration and ideation, they really wanted to kind of focus on being that best answer. And one of the examples here that stood out to me and stand out to me to show the power of this came from an email from a pet parent that had experienced this directly. So on the screen, you see Rio. Rio is a 3-year-old chocolate lab pit mix. And unfortunately, her pet parent, one night, it was the middle of the night, saw that Rio was convulsing and not responsive. And like all of us, he panicked and he started hopping into Google and looking at search. He ended up landing on a Hill's Science Diet page, which not only told him what was wrong, heat exhaustion, which can be fatal in dogs, but it gave him step-by-step examples of how to help Rio cool down and navigate the situation. The net result of that was absolutely incredible. So this email came through 4 a.m. in Ohio. My dog started convulsing. I didn't know what to do. I turned to Google and landed on your content. That helped me navigate. The most helpful tip was putting cool cloths under Rio's armpits, and essentially you helped me in a critical time and potentially helped save my dog's life, which, talk about a customer for life. So, because of their commitment and their library and their approach that they've built out now, Hills has gotten 12 plus million visits annually, organically through search to their content, all around these helping moments. So as we think through the power of velocity and credibility and alignment, like this is a perfect example of this in a microcosm of their larger obsession with truly helping their customers navigate any of the challenges that they see. So as we move from pet parents to small business, excuse me one second, we look at QuickBooks, who has done a really, really amazing job understanding it's not always what you say, but how you say it. So for the QuickBooks team, when they think of their ability to help, it's really, especially within small business, noticing and being honest about the gap that occurs with diversity in entrepreneurship. So no surprises to any of us as you look at the demographics of entrepreneurs. There's not a ton of access to capital and information and mentors to look up for many of the diverse segments that are becoming really powerful growth areas for our culture and our country. So QuickBooks said, hey, this could be an area that we help. And they had already done more kind of broad-based start and grow your business content because it's they saw that as a helpful moment, but they realized in order to truly align with these audiences and help them, they needed to go a few steps further. So as kind of fast forward to last August-ish, and they were approaching National Hispanic Heritage Month, their team made a substantial investment to do an event, a roundtable with Pitbull, Soledad O'Brien, a couple of small business owners, and a coach to really have an honest panel conversation around minority entrepreneurship and hopefully motivate more U.S. Hispanic folks to start their own business. However, this roundtable was a moment, and they wanted to say, hey, we're trying to be present more than just kind of a 1 hour roundtable. Like, how do we extend this event and really maximize the impact that we're able to have? So to do that, we looked at a content strategy to kind of wrap around this event. And to ensure that this actually spoke to their audiences, QuickBooks did something really, really smart. So they secured a Latin designer and author and actually had them go through 100 plus of their start your own business assets and recreate a playbook through a cultural lens. And the result of that was amazing. I'll show you here. So these are all custom illustrations, a suite of assets, really around like having a nod to the brand, but not have it feel like a corporate packet of information. And really, the output of this is substantially different than anything they'd ever done and anything they would do if they hadn't partnered with really focused creatives and given them the latitude to create something magical. And as we moved through this event, the chat was on fire. People from the audience were saying how appreciative they are of QuickBooks investing in their community and truly understanding them. The executives at Intuit and QuickBooks talked about this as a moment of magic. Even Pitbull tweeted out an ebook, which is tough to imagine. And the thing is about all of this is all of these materials existed. They existed in the universe. They were approved resources. They were in the QuickBooks universe. But the magic here is partnering with creatives to bring the message to market in a way that is highly relevant, highly aligned with the audiences, and different than they could have done on their own, which they never would have been able to do. And now, instead of focusing on these kind of moments of magic, it gives QuickBooks the authority to build a platform around modern and diverse entrepreneurship, helping every segment get elevated, and they're investing in that as they move forward, which is really, really cool. And for our final example, imagine that you have a highly sophisticated strategy going after a specialized audience. You're about to hit launch on your content, and then you're forced to pivot on a dime. So that's what happened here with GE Healthcare. So GE Healthcare had strong one-to-one relationships with cardiologists just by selling into their offices, but had no content, had very little thought leadership, if any, with them. And as folks were learning and interacting with them more and more online, they realized that they needed to invest and change that. So Casey referenced Fast Insights. So the first thing they did is start to learn about these audiences. So search, social, panel data, all of those elements to really unpack the mindset and the needs, the frustrations and the goals that cardiologists felt. And then to scale relevance and trust, it came down to the credibility of the creatives. So here you see some of them: medical writers, practicing cardiologists, influential and trusted voices in the market that can truly scale while bringing insights and credibility with them. So they had the insights, they had the team kind of ready to go. They were moving through the initial batch of content for launch, and the pandemic hit. So what do? They knew and understood the audience, and they understood at least as much as they could, the path forward and what needed to happen to help them. So they pivoted and started to create a library of content to support cardiologists through all of the unknowns within the pandemic. And the results were fantastic. So here, there we go. So here you can see they quickly built up a library and invested a ton of energy. That led to 1,600 plus ranked positions within search, which was top in their competitive set around COVID-19 related issues, which are obviously top of mind for cardiologists, and ultimately led to $70+ million in influence pipeline, millions of dollars of influence revenue, and truly a thought leadership position that they didn't have before, all inside of 12 or so months. So really, as you think of these ingredients, it's focusing on the audience, the helping moments, and relevance and velocity to truly make an impact. So the questions we get quite a bit is, folks see this, is how do brands get started, and how do they think about scaling this across what can be large and complex organizations? So if we oversimplify this into two buckets, the first is a top-down restructure, which I would say is the less, this is more rare than the other option. This requires a leader who wants to basically rip and replace how they think about the customer experience and digital content across every avenue, every customer interaction across the organization, basically at once. So they'll build, typically a center of excellence and look at all the content gaps and audit everything and figure out the gaps and go quickly. We have seen that done, but that's tends to be slightly less frequent. The other is what we refer to as organic expansion, which is taking an industry or an audience set or a key pillar that you want to own and really focusing there to get started. And as you move and develop content, you're basically modeling the way for the rest of the organization. So then the next persona or group comes on board, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then before you know it, you have a cohesive approach to content and customer obsession across the enterprise, and you did it in a way that was linear and manageable. So as we think about customer obsession and being customer obsessed as a brand, you're starting to see how and why these principles come to life. The idea of being customer centric, truly understanding and caring about them, paying them off, and not doing it through a campaign or moment in time, doing it in an ongoing way to show a commitment, and the payback on that is substantial. So as you think through how this fits within your world, if you're going through this journey at all, please feel free to reach out to me and Casey if we can help. We'd love to help in any way that we can and be part of your journey.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Casey. A quick question for me, really. How do we, how do we better create content that customers actually care about?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and one of the key questions, right? So like the easy answer is listen, right? That's always been true. Listen to your customer. I think, what listening means is something a lot more layered. And something I mentioned was fast insights, right? So a great way to orient yourself around customers beyond just sort of creating these kind of boilerplate personas that people are in theory, looking at as they come up with messaging, is listening on an ongoing basis to data that indicates what's happening both inside your brand and outside your brand. So you can't just look at your customer and analyze how from performance metrics, traffic, et cetera, how that customer is interacting with your brand. That's where data from search, keyword research, search intents, social listening data is really helpful, because it's more about your customer operating in their world, regardless of your brand. It's important to have that context as well as how customers interact with your brand. And then I think you can never underestimate the power of just asking your customer the question, of sort of experience metrics, NPS data, asking when a customer, reaches a certain milestone in their decision-making journey, did our, content, or did we help you, with this process, with this easy for you? So you can sort of have a benchmark and start to move the needle more significantly in a positive direction.
Fantastic.
I would have a part B to that, which is really think about your motivation. So most brands, Casey referenced the funnel or the journey, and at every stage, you're like, how do I convert this person? How do I convert this person? Instead of, how do I truly help this person? How do I create raving fans? And it's a bit of a mindset shift, because you actually have to do both. But if you build avenues to do business with you, but your motivation is to help and inspire and really invest in those customers, the content will be different. I promise you that. And it requires marketing to really be like a light, a light for the organization to say, like, this is our vision, and we have to help, and we have to step up, and these are the issues we're solving. And it's not about selling more products. It's about truly helping your customer and focusing on why you exist in the world versus speeds and feeds or what you sell.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. And we have a question from our audience. We have Paula, I think, from First Horizon Bank. Hey, Paula, how are you? And what is your question for Dan or Casey? You're not going to appear there, Paula. You're going to appear down there. Don't know why I was walking backwards. Stupid of me. Walking backwards for Christmas. What's your question, Paula?
Hi, good morning. The question is, and this may seem in contrast to what you just said about, it's not about the product you sell, but it's about helping the client. So forgive, I was listening. But the question is really about, how do you think about funding the content? Is it about a percentage of your total budget? Is it about an ROI kind of performance where you can see where you are selling more products? You've got a shorter sales cycle. You've got more share of wallet. Like, is it a performance thing that then informs you have more budget for content? So it's a little bit of a front end. How do you fund it and budget it, and then how do you demonstrate its effectiveness so that you get more funding for it in the long run? So a little bit of a front and back end, a little bit of a cycle question.
Dan, do you want to take the front end and I can take the back?
Yeah, so I think largely, if as you think about this like ecosystem approach where content touches everything you do, it can draw from lots of different budgets. We see folks look at hey, this is PR, this is search, this is social, this is content, this is demand gen. So it's almost a necessary point for all of those things. One of the things that we've observed as the content marketing industry has grown up, it was typically viewed as a mechanism for acquisition. So everything was almost like direct response, which minimizes and diminishes the value of this substantially. We're trying to like erase the word marketing and just think of content to help drive the digital experience. And if you think about all of the activities you have and all the customer interactions that you have, it's almost foundational and required to do it well. You can show results of that through, are my campaigns more effective? Am I drawing more people into my website? If it's a B2B, we winning accounts through account-based marketing and semi-custom or version content that's helping us win. So there's lots of ways to justify. We typically look at key initiatives that you have at the organizational level. What is the vision? Where do you want to go? And how do we measure that? And what are short-term indicators and then long-term growth that we can measure to make sure that it's effective? But there's not a short answer because it literally touches everything that you do.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
I would agree. And I think having that attribution in place is really key, but it's also really challenging, right, from an analytics perspective, to get the tech and the right tech stack set up to be able to follow through and say this person touched content at this point, at this point, at this point, and this point. So therefore, we knew it influenced their decision-making process in a positive way. Some brands can do that, and if you can do that, that's obviously great data to have to be able to justify ongoing investment in content creation. I think also, when you're focusing on how content can support the customer journey, you need to be consistently looking at where your customers are sort of like falling out of the journey. Where are you losing them? And then you can hone in on the metrics where you're moving the needle in an obvious way that's supporting the business. So are we making the sales cycle shorter? That was one thing you mentioned. That's something that we look at when we're creating, sales enablement content. Is that actually turning around and having a difference on the sales cycle itself? So you have the right mindset with that. I would see another thing that we see working as people look at atomizing content and creating more personalized experiences and things like that is production metrics. So how many times was this piece of content repurposed across multiple different experiences? So what's the ROI on per asset basis is also gaining prominence in justification as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Steve. Paul, I hope that was useful.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you, Paula. I'll walk backwards while we say goodbye to you as well, just so it feels normal. Take care. And now I think we have John Faviano. John, hello. How are you, sir? What's your question for Dana Casey? Oh, do we not have John? It's the walking backwards. It's because I didn't walk backwards. If I walk backwards, maybe John will appear.
The wrong clicker.
Yeah, exactly right. Do we have John? Should be with us in just 1 second. Here we go. I think it appears that our producers are not quite sure how to count because I'm at one elephant and significantly more. Hey, look, let's go to a question. Here we go. John Faviano.
Cool. Can you guys hear me okay now? Or?
Yeah, we can hear you grand. Hey, John.
Okay,
Thank you,
cool.
Steve. What's your question, sir?
Cool. Yeah, so thank you. I didn't know if we were out of time, but it was all very interesting, and I think a lot of statistics and a lot of ROI driven, which is great. But one of the things I'm seeing, and I work for AB InBev, so great content, customer centricity, but the change management and the people oriented, how are you addressing that to be more data led, less just earned and channel specific and like PR type content. 'Cause I still see a lot of that, and getting people to be more data led in the sense of consumer level audience segmentation and usage of it, I guess is how I'll put it.
Fantastic stuff. Who would like to pick that up? How do you get people to be more data led?
I can kind of take the first pass at it. Part of it is the kind of mechanics about how content is created. So if we look at being data led, as Casey pointed out, there's a lot of junctures where data becomes really important. So some of it is like internal PR, like, hey, here's if we're creating a bunch of stuff and it's not working or it's ineffective, it's because either we're creating the wrong stuff through the wrong lens. It doesn't have the right sort of connection points into the organization, so we're seeing significant drop-offs, or we have a ton of thought leadership stuff, but there's no mid and lower funnel connection to it, or there's no real connection to our business or our brand. So the more you can use data to not only inform like what the customer cares about, but how the content is connecting with them and ultimately driving the business forward. There's a leadership and ownership element there. So making sure there's a cohesive vision, there's a role for data in that. And then there's also, in some cases, like we work with Verizon, for example, and, they're looking at almost a governance process to say, hey, before we create anything, let's talk about what we're creating, why, and some data behind it. Obviously, you don't want to create bottlenecks in the business and slow down production. But, to your point, being data-led has significant downstream performance impact. So part of it, like I said, is socializing the vision, the role data plays into it, how people should think about data, and then having some sort of governance, not to police or slow things down, but to make sure that those things are happening, and then celebrating wins and showing the difference, really, like, hey, this is when we use data, this is when we don't. So like starting to show before and after in the business impact of that as well.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much, Steve.
Yeah, I think before and after is really important, and having, as Dan mentioned, that holistic content strategy. When you have the holistic content strategy and everybody is on the same page and operating, however you slice and dice your marketing organization, in pursuit of that, the big data lives here, right? The data on the customer is informing that strategy. So you don't always have to require that each individual contributor is constantly looking at data, right? But there is a North Star of sort of a data cluster that you're looking at to sort of filter down and impact all of the content that you're creating. And so when you come back together, say from a reporting metric standpoint, it's really important to have that unified view, right? It may not be a literal dashboard, but you really do want to have those regular meetings where everybody's looking at performance data holistically, because as we know, and I mentioned before, you've got that sort of like funnel metric thinking where it's, our blog team's looking at traffic and, this team's looking at pickup, and you need to see how everything adds up together.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you, John, for the question. I hope that answered it for you, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Dan, Casey, thank you very much indeed. We are to time. Thanks for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the summit. Thanks a lot. Speak to you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.